Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and I want to talk about the amazing, historically unprecedented Magic the Gathering Lord of the Rings set that we're about to get. And I want to talk about the tag, A Universe Beyond. Okay, so I talk a lot about Dungeons & Dragons canon. It's a subject I am incredibly well-versed on. I know a lot about Dungeons & Dragons canon. Honestly, I'm going to tell you right now, I think I know more about Dungeons & Dragons canon than anybody in the world. And the reason why is I think most people who study Dungeons & Dragons canon, they think it ends at the D&D canon hardbacks, which is absurd. And there's a prejudice toward understanding that there's canon, right? There's Dungeons & Dragons canon in Funko Pops. A lot of Dungeons & Dragons purists don't want to think about that, right? But here's the reality: is Dungeons & Dragons has had miniatures from day one. Dungeons & Dragons has miniatures day now, right? Go to Funko Pop, you buy your Drizzt Do'Urden miniature, and literally every Funko Pop that was ever made is at perfect scale and can be used as a Dungeons & Dragons miniature, right? So basically, you have that situation happen where you have that situation happen where what is Dungeons & Dragons canon, right? So I believe I am the preeminent expert on Dungeons & Dragons canon because I'm willing to see the full scope of it, right? And that the full scope of Dungeons & Dragons canon, who's going to tell you that the scope of Dungeons & Dragons canon, and it is, all right, let's talk it through, right? Dungeons & Dragons canon is Lego. We're getting already Lego approved, Dungeons & Dragons approved, Lego, Dragon's Keep, Journey's End, right? It's got a green dragon in it. You can go find the green dragon canon in the monster manual, right? Tell me if I'm wrong. In my humble opinion, D&D canon exists in Lego already, right? Certainly exists in Funko Pop. Certainly exists, in my humble opinion, certainly exists within Creo. Did you know that there was a Lego before Lego, right? Dungeons & Dragons shares miniatures with Creo miniatures with official Dungeons & Dragons Creons. They literally call Creons, and there are Star Trek Creons, and there are My City Creons, right? It's incredible, right? Lego, D&D has canon in Yahtzee, right? There's just the canon is Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves canon, right? So Dungeons & Dragons canon is voluminous, right? So what is Universe Beyond? So let me explain what's been used from Hasbro already, right? So basically, Hasbro goes out to we'll talk about Warhammer, and then we'll talk about the Tolkien estate, right? So Warhammer suits and Hasbro suits get together, and they're like, hey, everybody loves Warhammer, and they're like, we know everybody loves Magic the Gathering, right? So why don't we make a Warhammer set, right? And so the suits are like, yeah, let's do that. But the suits at Warhammer but the suits at Games Workshop, is that right? Yeah, Games Workshop, yeah. They're like, oh, well, you're not going to be putting Space Marines up in the middle of Dungeons & Dragons, are you? And they're like, no. We're gonna do the Hasbro suits are like, no, your intellectual property's safe. We're gonna slap a tag on it called Universe Beyond. Warhammer Universe is a Universe Beyond. And then those suits go over and they say, hey, you creatives, get to work. I want a Space Marine up in Magic the Gathering the next week. Oh, and make sure it's disconnected. It's a Universe Beyond. That intellectual property is not connected. And the creatives are like, yeah, you got it, Bob. Right? And then he goes, make sure it's separate. You got it, Bob. Don't worry about it. Right? And then Sally, the Wizards of the Coast creative, completely trolls the Hasbro suit. Right? And here's how it's done. Right? Soul Ring. Soul Ring is in Warhammer, right? As a card, as an item, right? And it's in virtually every Magic the Gathering set that's ever been printed. It's ridiculous. It's all over, right? And it's the creative going, oh, hey, it's Sally, the Hasbro creative, saying, oh, Bob said these worlds have to be separate, right? A universe beyond. Hey, where's all our D&D canon? D&D Beyond. Just like Sally just laughing her butt off, right? And so what Universe Beyond is it's not a real separation of any of the worlds. The worlds are all completely connected by canon, in my humble opinion. The creatives have made sure they're connected by canon, right? But Universe Beyond, what is its actual purpose? It's not to separate the canon, right? What it is it's to mollify the suits on both sides. On the Hasbro side, and because they're like, oh yeah, we got to make sure that people can't make a story with Spider-Man. Got to make sure that people can't make a story with Batman. Got to make sure people can't make a D&D story with officially with a Space Marine. Can't do that, right? Got to keep them separate, right? And so Universes Beyond, it has one purpose. It has a real purpose, to mollify the suits and to completely troll them, right? This is happening in Magic the Gathering, Lord of the Rings, right? Universe Beyond. These aren't official. You can't just throw Gandalf into your Dungeons and Dragons game. This is a Universe Beyond. You can't make official story with Gandalf in Dungeons and Dragons. Can you not? Let's talk about this, right? So Bob, the suit, was like, oh, remember, we said Universe Beyond. It's not official. It's not canon, right? The creatives, what are they doing, right? So they make the Dungeons and Dragons, they make the Magic the Gathering Lord of the Rings set, right? Now, we already know that at minimum 3 of the Magic the Gathering settings are canon and will always be canon, right? Ravnica, Theros, Strixhaven. Don't get it twisted. Totally printed as a Magic world, totally printed as D&D canon hardbacks. Those 3 worlds are canon. And so even when Bob says this, it's pretty absurd, right? Because you're like, Bob, there's planeswalkers. They literally walk across the plains. They're like, Bob, you've been here like 5 years. Have you ever read any of the canon for Magic the Gathering? All that exists in Magic the Gathering is like 100 people who walk between worlds. Like, that's literally the story, right? So if you connect this world and you say it's a Universe Beyond, D&D Beyond, don't tell Bob, D&D Beyond, Universe Beyond, literally Beyond connects them. Like, they're literally connected to the word itself, right? Woo, like, okay, so, oh, D&D is separate, D&D Beyond, like they chose that word very carefully. Like, so you're saying, oh, the Universe Beyond doesn't connect to D&D, literally Beyond. The word is there. Like, the trolling of Bob, the Hasbro suit, is ridiculously, outrageously, it's so insulting to Bob. But it can be insulting to Bob, because these suits don't understand genre or canon. They don't want to, right? And so you don't even have to worry about them figuring it out. They have the ability to figure it out but they don't have the willingness, right? So get this, right? So how do you know, right, that when they attach Universe Beyond, right, to Magic the Gathering, Lord of the Rings, that's for Bob, that's not for you. That's totally a D&D canon world. Here's how you can tell, right? So, Frodo, Pippin, Merry, Gandalf, Aragorn, bang, 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 right? Let's talk about Frodo, Pippin, and Merry, right? So if this is Universe Beyond, it's very easy. All you have to do is share, like, so Bob comes in and is like, remember, Universe Beyond, it's got to be separate, right? And Sally's like, yeah, it'll be separate. No worries, Bob. has to control herself from laughing before he walks out the room, right? And then the design team's like, oh, so, okay, Universe Beyond, got it. In Dungeons and Dragons, we call them halflings. In Lord of the Rings, they're called hobbits, right? So the creature type on every printed Magic the Gathering card, let's make sure we call them hobbits, right? Because, we made this deal, right? And the best way to show that this is not a Dungeons & Dragons product is just call them hobbits. Put the word hobbit knight, hobbit fighter, hobbit cleric, hobbit scout, hobbit rogue, right? Just call them hobbits, and then it doesn't link to anything in Dungeons & Dragons. No. Sally was like, no. Bob's a schmuck. This is a canon world, right? Every single hobbit in the Magic the Gathering Lord of the Rings cards is called a halfling, right? It says it right there. Saying, hey, Scott, wake up. Yes, this is a universe beyond that completely connects to D&D Beyond, which has all the D&D canon. This is a canon set. Canon, right? In my humble opinion. Because the creatives are shouting it at the top of their lungs, right? They're putting every clue on the card, right? And like, how does magic work in Dungeons & Dragons now? We know from Strixhaven. We know from Ravnica. We know from Theros, right? When you cast a spell in Dungeons & Dragons, you draw the power from the plains, from the mountains, from the forests, from the islands, from the swamps. Every card in the Warhammer world, you draw from that same power source. Every spell on Magic the Gathering, Lord of the Rings, you draw from those sources, right? The only purpose, in my humble opinion, that Universe Beyond serves is to mollify Bob the Suit, both at Warhammer, both at the Tolkien estate and at Hasbro estate, right? But we are being provisioned with the real Dungeons & Dragons canon, in my humble opinion. And I'm talking right to you, right? I'm talking right to you, right? Hasbro, right? If you want to make this real and it's going to be Universe Beyond, you need to put it in the lore, right? Give us new colors. Give us new artifacts that are not reprints of the old cards, which exist across literally virtually every single Magic the Gathering world. If you're saying it's a Universe Beyond, don't put the same magic item in Warhammer and in Magic the Gathering Lord of the Rings, right? If it's truly a Universe Beyond, make it narratively a Universe Beyond. Like divide it, right? But I'm saying, what's in the box, right? I've pre-ordered my cards. I say they're D&D canon because your creatives have made them D&D canon, right? Now, if you want to make this real and if you want to make this real, make it real. Make the narrative separate from the actual, make the narrative a Universe Beyond. Literally put a dividing line. But right now, the creatives are saying, this isn't a hobbit, this is a halfling, the exact species in Dungeons & Dragons, so that you could take this card and put it directly next to your Dritz Do'Urden card. So because the narratives are together, right? That's my entire point. I'm telling you, I am the foremost subject matter expert on D&D canon because I'm willing to look at the full scope of it, right? And I'm telling you right now, there are creatives who understand all this and are fully trolling the suits at Hasbro itself and the suits at Games Workshop and the suits at the Tolkien estate, right? Because they don't care, right? But I care, right? And so the reality is, this is exactly what I'm saying. Universe Beyond is real and has a purpose. Its purpose is literally to troll the suits. It is not to tell you or I that Gandalf is not canon in D&D. Like, by every single narrative, by package, by lore, by product, all of it, it screams this is D&D canon. They started this journey with James Wyatt, and they are doing that journey with Jeremy Crawford and with Christopher Perkins right now. The creatives in Hasbro are completely trolling the suits at Hasbro, right? And why is this important? Because because D&D is important. It is genuinely important, right? There's about to be a millionaire, right? In my opinion, the one of one rings is going to be a millionaire, right? Whoever pulls that card is a millionaire. And guess who has a higher probability of being that millionaire? You and me. Because we're going to go to the FLGS and we're going to pull that card off the rack, right? And I think it was done to honor Gary Gygax because Magic has been canon to D&D since at minimum 2016 and has a history with Dungeons & Dragons going all the way back to 1997. Magic the Gathering is the legacy of Dungeons & Dragons. It's canon, in my humble opinion. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing. Have a wonderful millennium.